You don't notice the rhythm until it breaks, the usual route through the store, the familiar sound of sliding freezer doors, the quiet confidence that what you need will be on the shelf. But lately, something's shifted. The lentils are out of stock for the third week, the canned chicken is double what it cost in March, and the clerk at the checkout just shrugs. That's just how it is now. We're not in crisis, but we're not exactly steady either. The products we've quietly relied on, cheap, storable, essential, are becoming less predictable by the week. Some won't be easy to replace come July, and most shoppers won't realize until it's too late. This isn't fear, it's foresight. If you care about staying ready without playing into panic, these are the items to know before June ends. Stick around, your pantry will thank you, and subscribe now to stay quietly informed in a noisy grocery world. Number 1. Frozen shredded cheese, the everyday ingredient that vanishes. First, you'll find it in almost every freezer, tucked beside the broccoli or stuffed behind a bag of waffles. Frozen shredded cheese isn't flashy, but it's everywhere. It's what gets tossed onto pasta, melted into quesadillas, or thrown over casseroles on a lazy night. Most households buy it without thinking twice. But what people rarely realize is how quickly this simple comfort food disappears when the cold chain breaks, or when shoppers start thinking about food security. Cheese has the power of familiarity. It's warm, savory, and flexible, and the frozen variety stretches that comfort far beyond its expiration date. Yet the packaging doesn't tell you that cheese, especially shredded and pre-bagged, sits on the front lines of grocery fragility. It's one of the first items to vanish in a crisis not because of panic, but because of infrastructure. Frozen cheese depends on 3 things: stable dairy production, refrigerated transport, and consistent freezer space. All 3 are under stress. Dairy herds across the U.S. have declined for 3 consecutive years due to rising feed costs and water shortages. At the same time, cold storage facilities are being overwhelmed, not just by food, but by pharmaceuticals, meal kits, and frozen imports. During the early 2025 Texas grid shock, shredded cheese was one of the first frozen items to sell out statewide. Not toilet paper, not bread, cheese. Because when refrigeration is threatened, shoppers instinctively grab what gives comfort, fat, and protein, and can be frozen long term. And the frozen format matters. A block of cheddar might mold in the fridge if forgotten, but frozen shreds hold steady for months, ready to be tossed directly into a hot pan or oven dish. They're more than a topping. They're a survival-ready fat source with shelf-adjacent flexibility. Imagine this. The power's out, fresh food is dwindling, and cooking fuel is limited. A single bag of shredded cheese becomes the bridge. It turns plain rice into something edible. It gives a tortilla structure. It comforts a kid too stressed to eat anything else. If your freezer has space, it's worth filling just a little more. Not with flashy frozen meals, but with what actually carries meals forward when fresh ingredients vanish. Shredded cheese isn't just a sidekick. In hard weeks, it quietly holds the meal and the mood together. Number 2. Unsweetened applesauce cups, the quiet shelf hero no one thinks about. They sit in the kids' lunch section, neatly stacked in 6-packs, often overlooked by adults unless there's a toddler in the house. Unsweetened applesauce cups don't feel like survival food. They feel like snack time, like school lunches, like something that belongs in a daycare more than a pantry prep kit. But what most people miss is how quietly powerful this simple product becomes when the supply chain stutters or your body starts to feel the lack of fresh food. The appeal is easy to overlook. No added sugar, long shelf life, and single-serve convenience. But the real strength is in its combination of nutrients and accessibility. Applesauce delivers vitamin C, hydration, and gentle fiber, all without needing refrigeration, prep, or cooking. When you're sick, tired, or stressed, it's one of the few things your body will accept without resistance. Most households don't think of fruit as part of their survival strategy. They rely on canned peaches or frozen berries when fresh disappears. But those come with 2 challenges: spoilage and preparation. Applesauce dodges both. In a power outage, it doesn't go bad. In low water conditions, it doesn't require rinsing, draining, or cleaning up. And here's the overlooked truth. During disruptions, digestion matters. Instant noodles might fill you up, but they don't keep your system balanced. Applesauce is easy on the stomach, safe for children, elders, and anyone recovering from illness. In fact, hospitals routinely use it as a base food for soft diets, not just because it's gentle, but because it keeps patients nourished when other foods fail. From a supply standpoint, applesauce has vulnerabilities too. Apple harvests have been erratic across the US and Europe due to late spring frosts and declining pollinator populations. And because most manufacturers prioritize flavored varieties, the unsweetened version, arguably the most versatile, often disappears first when demand spikes. Think of it like the electrolyte drink of the food aisle. Quiet, helpful, something you don't reach for when things are normal. But once stress hits, you wish you had more of it. If your shelf is full of rice, beans, and pasta, this is the missing counterbalance. It's not a full meal, but it's the kind of small, dependable bite that keeps you going when the bigger ingredients run low. Number 3. Plain Cheerios or Bran Flakes. The breakfast you'll miss when the shelves empty. They're not exciting. They don't come with cartoon mascots or neon colors. But for millions of households, a bowl of plain cereal, whether it's Cheerios, Bran Flakes, or something similar, is the quiet beginning of the day. It's light, quick, familiar, and usually affordable. That's what makes it feel permanent. But what most shoppers don't realize is how close this everyday staple is to becoming a fragile luxury during even mild disruptions. Plain cereals serve a deeper role than just convenience. They're fortified, delivering iron, B vitamins, and fiber in ways many other shelf foods can't. For low-meat diets or tight budgets, cereals like Cheerios or Bran Flakes are often the primary source of daily iron, something most people don't think about until energy levels drop. In emergencies, when diets narrow and fresh produce disappears, this quiet nutrient backup becomes essential. And yet, cereal supply is far from stable. These products rely on processed grain inputs like oats and wheat bran, both of which are increasingly weather sensitive. The 2024 oat harvest in Canada was well below average, and wheat futures have remained high due to European heat waves and grain corridor instability in Eastern Europe. These pressures don't just hit luxury items, they creep quietly into the basics, causing shrinkflation and empty shelves that only show up when it's too late. Then there's production. Big brand cereals are manufactured in high-speed, centralized plants that depend on reliable packaging, freight, and flavor additive supply chains. A single hiccup, whether it's cardboard shortage or flavoring delay, can stall the entire line. That's why you've probably already noticed gaps in cereal varieties, especially less sweet or plain versions. From a survival perspective, plain cereal is low fuss, low fuel, and low risk. You don't need to cook it. You can eat it dry. You can stretch it with water if milk runs out. And for children or the elderly, it's one of the few shelf foods that feels normal, without being salty, spicy, or artificial. Think of it like the paperback book of your pantry. Not flashy, not essential in a dramatic sense, but once it's gone, the mornings feel heavier and the silence a little louder. Now's the time to grab that family-sized box or two, because when things start to thin out, the plain stuff, the background comforts, are always the first to quietly disappear. Number 4, tortilla wraps, the shelf-stable bread alternative that outlasts the loaf. They're stacked quietly near the bread aisle or hanging in vacuum-sealed packs by the deli cooler. Tortilla wraps don't get much attention unless it's taco night or you're reaching for a quick lunch option. But behind their casual, everyday use is a kind of quiet durability that makes them one of the smartest, most underappreciated items you can have in your pantry, especially when disruptions begin. Most people think of bread as the default. It's part of the daily routine. Toast, sandwiches, snacks, but bread is fragile. It molds fast. It's bulky, and it requires preservatives to last even a few days. Tortillas, on the other hand, are built differently, especially when vacuum-packed or sold in shelf-stable formats. They offer everything bread does, but with far more staying power. Here's what most shoppers don't consider. Tortilla wraps are resilient by design. Their low moisture content, flattened shape, and ingredient simplicity allow them to last weeks, sometimes months, without refrigeration. That's why they're used not just in homes, but in institutional settings, military rations, and emergency food kits. They don't break, they don't stale as quickly, and they don't demand precious fridge or freezer space. But supply isn't infinite. Most mass-market tortillas depend on processed flour and industrial lard or oil blends, sourced through complex, time-sensitive logistics. In recent years, volatility in wheat prices and cooking oil imports, especially sunflower and soybean, have narrowed production margins. And as brands stretch shelf life further, preservatives like calcium propionate or fumaric acid are facing regulatory pressure and supply delays. During the early 2025 Midwestern freight slowdown, several major stores quietly ran low on tortillas, not because demand spiked, but because regional distributors couldn't keep up with delivery gaps. Fresh bread came and went in waves, but vacuum-sealed tortillas? Those disappeared and stayed gone for weeks. Tortillas also flex across meals. Breakfast burrito, lunch wrap, snack quesadilla, dinner flatbread. They hold up better than sandwich bread, especially under stress. No crumbling, no soggy collapse. In a power outage or low cook scenario, you can warm them with minimal fuel or eat them cold. That's not just convenience, it's control. Think of them like the denim jeans of your pantry. Simple, dependable, versatile, and strangely irreplaceable once they're gone. If your shelf has flour, rice, and canned beans, but no tortillas, you're missing the bridge that ties it all together. Grab the pack now, not because you're panicking, but because the smartest prep often looks like a normal grocery run. Number 5. Tortilla wraps, the bread alternative that quietly outperforms in crisis. They don't look like a survival item, just a soft pack tucked by the bread shelf or near the deli fridge, round, flat, and forgettable. Tortilla wraps feel like a convenience food, something you grab for burritos or a quick lunch wrap, but hidden in that familiar packaging is a quiet kind of readiness that standard bread can't match. Tortillas do what bread does, hold fillings, carry calories, complete a meal, but they store longer, break less easily, and don't demand refrigeration. That's why they're quietly relied on by field kitchens, emergency kits, and long-haul truckers. In moments of instability, when fresh items vanish and prep time shrinks, tortilla wraps stay ready. Most shoppers never think twice about shelf life until it's too late. Bread molds, crackers crumble, but vacuum-packed tortillas, especially flour-based ones, can last weeks in the pantry, or months if stored in a cool place. They're flat, space-efficient, and versatile across every meal of the day. But this quiet reliability doesn't come without friction. Tortilla production depends on stable flour supplies and refined oil blends. In 2024, drought in key wheat regions pushed prices higher, while fluctuations in cooking oil imports slowed down many factory lines. Even packaging has become a bottleneck. Those resealable pouches and vacuum seals require specialized materials, many of which are now in shorter supply due to resin shortages and overseas shipping delays. The result? In early 2025, several regional grocery chains reported spot outages of shelf-stable tortillas, not because people were panic buying, but because distribution hiccups weren't resolved quickly. Fresh loaves returned, tortillas didn't. Their longer shelf life ironically made them a slower restock priority. Think of a wrap as more than a meal wrapper. In emergencies, it becomes a heatable plate, a meal extender, even a morale booster. You don't need a toaster. You don't need a pan. You just need something to hold protein, vegetables, or even a spoonful of peanut butter. From a survival perspective, tortillas are the bridge food. They connect your shelf-stable ingredients into something you'll actually eat. Because when stress is high and routines are broken, food that feels normal is worth more than you think. If your pantry is full of rice, beans, and canned chicken, but no tortillas, you might be missing the one item that makes the rest usable. Number 6. Dry pancake mix, the weekend comfort that doubles as emergency fuel. It's usually found on the bottom shelf in the baking aisle, nestled between cake flour and cornbread mix. Dry pancake mix doesn't look like much, just a box with instructions and a smiling stack of flapjacks on the front. It's a weekend item, a lazy breakfast food. But what most people overlook is how easily this ordinary product turns into a crisis-time staple. The appeal is simple. All it needs is water. No eggs, no milk, no butter, just water and heat. That one feature makes it one of the lowest barrier, calorie-dense meals you can prepare when systems are strained. Whether the fridge is empty or the power is inconsistent, pancake mix delivers warm food without the guesswork. Unlike many boxed meals, dry pancake mix stores well and stretches far. A standard box can yield multiple meals, and when made into smaller portions, flatbreads, fritters, or skillet cakes, it becomes more than breakfast. It becomes a base. Here's what most people don't know. Pancake mix supply depends on refined flour, leavening agents like baking powder, and stabilizers that all pass through industrial channels vulnerable to delay. In 2025, wheat prices remain elevated due to global shortages, while leavening compounds like sodium acid pyrophosphate have seen spot shortages in some U.S. processing plants. It's not dramatic, but it's enough to create small rolling gaps in availability, especially for the just-add-water types. And this product tends to quietly disappear when weather events hit. During winter storms or hurricane prep cycles, pancake mix is often one of the first things to vanish from shelves, not just because it's easy to cook, but because families know kids will eat it even under stress. In survival terms, pancake mix is moral food. It's simple, familiar, and warm. It doesn't feel like rationing when you're flipping pancakes. It feels like control, even if just for 15 minutes. That kind of psychological comfort has real value when routines collapse. Think of a pancake mix like the acoustic guitar of your pantry. You won't miss it until silence sets in. Then you'll wish you had something that could fill the gap with something warm, normal, and quietly nourishing. If there's room on your shelf for one more overlooked essential, this is a smart pick. Not because it's dramatic, but because it makes hard days feel a little more human. Number 7. Frozen plain. Greek yogurt. The protein you forget until it's gone. It's not usually a headline item in a survival pantry. Plain Greek yogurt feels like something you toss into the cart on autopilot, maybe for breakfast, maybe for baking, maybe for the dog. But when bought in large tubs and frozen, this unassuming dairy product quietly becomes one of the most versatile and valuable items you can keep on hand. Most people just don't think of it that way until they need it. Yogurt, especially the plain Greek kind, delivers something hard to find in shelf-stable food: clean protein. A single cup can offer 15 to 20 grams alongside calcium, potassium, and gut-friendly probiotics. It's a slow-burning food, filling but light and flexible across meals. Add honey, it's breakfast. Mix garlic and lemon, it's a sauce. Blend it, it's a smoothie base. But in a supply crunch, it also becomes an anchor, something familiar, functional, and hard to replicate. What people often miss is how easy it is to store for the long haul. Freezing plain Greek yogurt doesn't ruin it. The texture changes slightly, more crumbly when thawed, but the nutritional integrity stays intact. If you stir or blend it after defrosting, it's still usable in cooking, baking, or direct eating. And this becomes valuable when refrigeration reliability starts to wobble. In early 2025, several regions across the southern U.S. faced rolling power outages during heat waves. Fresh dairy flew off shelves in hours, but frozen tubs, those stuck around, quietly insulating households that had planned ahead. With cold packs or partial freezer use, yogurt becomes a slow-thaw source of protein when meat's no longer an option. The problem is, yogurt supply is tightening. Greek-style varieties require more milk to produce, roughly 3 times more than standard yogurt. And with dairy herds shrinking and feed costs rising, producers have quietly reduced output of plain, unsweetened versions in favor of flavored, higher-margin lines. This means the one kind of yogurt that stores best and adapts across meals is often the first to be out of stock during shelf resets. Think of it like the multi-tool in your fridge. Small, often overlooked, but critical when you need flexibility. It's not a luxury, it's insurance you can scoop with a spoon. If your freezer has room between the frozen peas and the pizza, a couple tubs of plain Greek yogurt could make all the difference when routines fracture. Number 8. Jarred pasta sauce. The disruption you won't see until the jars are gone. It's one of the most grabbed items in the grocery store, right next to the pasta, in tidy glass jars or plastic tubs with pictures of tomatoes and herbs. Jarred pasta sauce is dinner on autopilot. It's what you reach for when time's short, energy's low, or groceries are overdue. But behind that easy convenience is a deeper reliance on ingredients, on packaging, and on systems that don't always hold. Most people don't think of pasta sauce as vulnerable. It's everywhere. Marinara, garlic herb, tomato basil. But what they don't realize is how exposed this product is to multiple points of failure, all of which are quietly converging in 2025. Start with tomatoes. The core ingredient in nearly every sauce is under stress. California, which supplies over a quarter of the world's processed tomatoes, has faced consecutive years of drought, water restrictions, and labor shortages. That's led to reduced yields, lower quality, and higher prices per ton. In 2024, the price for tomato paste, used as the sauce base, hit a 12-year high. Then there's the glass. Pasta sauce jars don't just appear. They rely on domestic glass production, which has faced bottlenecks due to energy costs, raw material shortages, and slowed furnace maintenance schedules. When producers can't get jars, they bottle fewer sauces. Some brands have already shifted to plastic, not for preference, but out of necessity. And sugar plays a role too. Low-sugar sauces are harder to preserve and more expensive to stabilize. That's why they're often the first to be pulled when lines need to tighten. But they're also the most versatile, usable for diabetics, clean eaters, and those trying to limit processed foods in crisis situations. When the supply tightens, jarred sauce is one of the first items shoppers notice missing, not because it's a luxury, but because it holds meals together. Pasta with plain oil or dry seasoning isn't the same. A jar of sauce turns dry noodles into dinner. Think of pasta sauce like the glue of quick food. It's not fancy, but it holds flavor, structure, and comfort. And in moments of high stress, it's often the difference between food that fills and food that satisfies. If you're buying extra pasta, the matching sauce matters just as much, because when the jars vanish, what's left isn't just dry, it's incomplete. Number 9. Frozen mixed vegetables, the backup nutrition that disappears. First, they're at the bottom of the freezer aisle, often sold in simple plastic bags with quiet labeling. Peas, carrots, corn, green beans. No flashy branding, no marketing push. Just store-brand mixed vegetables in 1-pound bags. They don't seem like a high priority until they're gone. And when they go, they tend to vanish everywhere at once. Frozen vegetables are a daily staple. They're added to rice, tossed into soups, sautéed next to protein, or microwaved as a side dish. Most households don't stockpile them. They just assume they'll always be there. But what most people don't consider is how fragile this convenience has become in 2025. These vegetables are harvested in massive quantities, flash frozen, and packed for national distribution. That process depends on coordinated cold storage, stable transport, and year-round labor at multiple levels. Any disruption, weather, labor strikes, freight issues, can ripple through fast. And unlike dry goods, there's no easy backup for frozen vegetables. Canned options exist, but they're often less appealing and and lower in texture, flavor, and nutrition. In early 2025, several major processors flagged labor shortages during harvest windows, particularly for corn and green bean operations in the Midwest. As a result, inventory was reduced before it ever hit shelves. At the same time, frozen storage facilities in parts of the South were overburdened, serving not just grocery clients, but pharmaceutical, ice cream, and meat distributors as well. The consequence was quiet but noticeable. Fewer restocks, limited variety, and more gaps in store-brand freezers. And when prices go up, budget shoppers are the first to feel it. Store-brand mixed vegetables, often $1 per bag, are now creeping toward $1.50 or more in many regions. From a survival standpoint, frozen mixed vegetables are a vitamin bridge. They add fiber, color, and balance to shelf-stable starches. When fresh produce disappears or becomes unaffordable, frozen veg keeps meals nutritious, not just filling. They're especially critical for kids and elderly households, where nutrition density matters more than calorie volume. Think of them like the backup battery for your diet. Not glamorous, not central, but the thing that keeps everything else working. If your freezer has space and your meal plan depends on flexibility, a few extra bags of frozen vegetables might make the difference between eating well and just getting by. And once they're gone, they're not easy to replace. Number 10. Frozen plain bagels, the overlooked bread backup that buys you time. They're not sold as survival food, just a plastic sleeve of 6, maybe store brand, maybe name brand, stacked quietly near the freezer waffles and garlic bread. Plain bagels aren't exciting. They're routine, something you throw in the toaster and eat while checking emails. But when grocery supply chains get shaky and fresh bread starts to vanish, these humble rings of dough turn into something much more valuable. Shelf-adjacent stability with comfort built in. Bagels are everyday food, heavier than sandwich bread, more filling than crackers, and versatile across meals. But what most people don't realize is how well they perform under pressure, especially when frozen. Unlike most fresh breads, bagels handle freezing and thawing with minimal loss in texture. That means they can sit in your freezer for weeks or months, ready to step in when bakery shelves go bare. In early 2025, several grocery regions across the U.S. experienced erratic bread restocking, particularly after winter storms, regional freight slowdowns, and labor disputes at packaging plants. Fresh loaves came and went, but frozen bagels? Those held on. The stores that had them stayed calm longer. The households that had extras didn't feel the squeeze. That quiet resilience is what makes bagels so useful. Toast one and it's breakfast. Top with tuna and it's lunch. Slice and bake and it becomes makeshift toast chips. You don't need anything fancy, just heat. And even if you're short on power, they can be pan-warmed or eaten as is in a pinch. But supply isn't guaranteed. Bagels require enriched flour, yeast, and packaging that's temperature resistant. Components all facing cost increases and intermittent availability. Some brands have already reduced size or count per package without adjusting prices. And store-brand freezer sections are increasingly prioritizing high-margin items over basic bread backups. Think of bagels as your slow-burning match. They hold their value quietly and reliably, giving you options when fresher alternatives vanish. If your emergency shelf is full of rice and pasta and your fridge has protein, but your bread plan is hope the store has some, you're leaving a gap. A couple packs of frozen plain bagels can bridge that, not just for calories, but for routine. Because in the middle of disruption, something as simple as a toasted bagel can feel like things are still okay. Number 11. Unsweetened, shelf-stable, almond milk, the non-dairy lifeline. Most households miss. You'll find it in the health food aisle or near the cereal, boxed in slim cartons, sold singly or in 4-packs. Shelf-stable almond milk doesn't take up fridge space and doesn't seem urgent. It's often treated like a dietary preference, a backup for the lactose-free or a smoothie add-on. But when fresh milk runs dry and refrigeration becomes unreliable, this simple product turns into something quietly essential. The unsweetened version in particular matters. It stores for up to a year, works in savory and sweet dishes, and doesn't spike blood sugar like some flavored alternatives. It pours easily into cereal, coffee, baking mixes, even pancake batter or mac and cheese boxes. It's flexible in liquid form. What most shoppers don't realize is how fragile the plant-based milk supply chain actually is. Almond milk relies on California's almond crop, already under stress from water shortages and bee population declines. At the same time, the aseptic packaging used for shelf-stable carton cartons has faced raw material shortages since late 2023. It's not just what's inside the box, it's the box itself. In early 2025, a quiet wave of substitutions began. Oat milk replacing almond, sugar-added varieties replacing unsweetened. Not because of consumer demand, but because of manufacturer constraints. That's how quickly this always available option can shift when systems strain. From a survival standpoint, shelf-stable almond milk isn't just a drink, it's continuity. It lets you maintain morning rituals and standard recipes without relying on perishables. And unlike canned dairy or powdered milk, it doesn't require mixing or special storage. You just open, pour, and use. Think of it like bottled water with function. A shelf item that doesn't shout for attention but quietly preserves normalcy across meals. If you keep cereal, baking mixes, or instant oatmeal in your pantry, this is what completes them. And once shelves thin out, the unsweetened versions are always the first to disappear. Now is the moment to add a few cartons, not to hoard, but to hold space for a little stability later. At the end of the day, survival isn't built from bunker supplies or dramatic prep. It's built from small choices, quiet groceries that slip into a normal cart but serve a purpose when things start to strain. The items we take for granted, the bagels, the oats, the sauces, aren't just conveniences. They're the routines that anchor us when the outside world grows uncertain. Every cart holds a compromise between fresh and frozen, between affordable and durable. But the more we understand which everyday items carry quiet strength, the more prepared we become, without panic, without overthinking, and without giving up what makes food feel like home. Because in the end, resilience doesn't come from the obscure. It comes from the ordinary, stored wisely, chosen calmly, and ready when it's needed most. Stick with us if you want your next grocery run to hold more than just food. It might hold peace of mind.